February the 7th, 2021. Guys, you're looking at current images of our sun. This is a still shot. It's from the Solar Dynamics Observatory. These links are on our website at bpearthwatch.com. This image, it's a particular filter called the 193. There are 12 different camera images, and each filter gives you a different view of the different aspects of the sun. Here, in the dark areas, you're seeing what's called coronal holes, or coronal openings in the magnetic canopy of the sun. The brighter areas are actually where it would be like a cloudy day here, except that these are giant magnetic arches that go from one, they'll leave the surface of the sun and come back down, being pulled back by the gravity of the sun. But where you see the dark areas, it's an opening in that magnetic canopy, and that allows a solar wind traveling at a lot of times double the normal speed to come through that opening. And you're actually looking at two different areas here. This area and this area are slightly separate. There's going to be a kind of a gap in this area, guys, of the solar wind. In other words, when you see this section directly earth facing, it takes a couple of days for it to get here, depending on the speed. But what we're getting now is solar wind from this section. In other words, the sun is turning to your right here. And so we're dealing with that first area. So for the next couple of days, we're going to have elevated solar wind. Now, we've had in the Philippines and in Papua New Guinea, south of the Philippines, going towards Indonesia, there's been a 6.3 and a 6-point quake right on the Ring of Fire. And we're going to look at that solar wind, but we're in grand solar minimum still. We're trying to, they're restarting into solar cycle 25. We've seen a few sunspots, things like that. But it's about a 5.5-year process to get from the bottom of a solar cycle to the peak of it. So you're looking at 11.8 or so years for a total rise and fall of one cycle. But each of our last several cycles, the peaks have been less and less. So even though we're going into solar cycle 25, the trend is going into grand solar minimum, and that's what the meaning of it is. And when you have that, you have weaker shields that protect this planet from this type of thing. So as our shields are weak, the planet feels it. Again, the two quakes this morning, or actually UTC time, they were just before midnight last night. Now today, one of the things that caught my attention, as the solar wind is peaking now as we're speaking, there was at 11 a.m. UTC time this morning, a glacier broke loose in the Himalayas. There's about 150 people that are missing. Many are feared dead because it created a rock and mudslide through a small river that came through a village. And these are extremely high peaks at this point. And this was below the snow level of the upper Himalayas, but it still was a huge area. There are videos, if you go in and type glacier break in India causes a tsunami, is what they call it, you'll see the images of people that were taking with their cell phones. Some are on YouTube, some are on Twitter. And I'm not going to show them to you here because they're, it's copyrighted, but you can type it in and easily find a lot of stories about it. And it was a small village. Again, peaks coming right down to them on both sides, very high, and with that river coming through, and you see a rock slide and water coming down to the bottom of it. And we'll read a report about it. They were attempting, and they had been warned by the previous Secretary of India not to try to build a power dam there. And it looked like they were trying. They were on the starting, had the foundation laid and things like that. And I think that had a lot to do with channeling more of that water back into the city. You'll have to look at that and decide for yourself. But let's look at the solar wind. And this is a 3-day chart starting back Friday right here at 00 hours UTC time going through noon. And then this is Saturday, and here we are today into Sunday afternoon. Now, the purple line is the solar wind speed, and it has went from 365 at the dip there and has been rising since then. Now, right in this area last night, before midnight, we saw the quakes come in again to the Philippines area south of there and Papua New Guinea. Now, what happened, though, if we move this up to around 11 a.m. today, let this thing wind down. Let me get it in here now to a one-day chart. You'll see that right in this area today in the 1100 hours, see right there, 1109. This is when we started feeling the pressure start to rise again, dipped down slightly, but still well above normal. And that is when, in the 11 a.m. UTC time, is when the glacier broke off in the Himalayas and came down through that valley and flooded that village and possibly killed a lot of people. We'll take a look at that. Now, this is what's called the EDS or EDIS service in the RSOE map, and it shows different things going around the globe. And the USGS doesn't give us a lot of information out of China and the Indian region and the Himalayas. But I want to pull up into this area. Move over just a little right in here. Now, this is the Himalayan peaks along this, and you've got China here, Nepal, India comes up in this area. And right here, right after you, like again, crossing the peaks of the Himalayas out of China and back down into it's a huge valley if you'll go in and again and look at the terrain there. It's unbelievable. It looks like the Grand Canyon or something. But if you click on this, it says at 11:07 a.m., that's when we saw that steady out and start to rise back up on the solar wind speed. You had a landslide, and it was the landslide was caused by a glacier break as that solar wind was continuing to pound our shields. And it's called Uttarakhand State there, but that the locals call it the Valley of the Gods because of the shrines and stuff. We'll take a look at it. Now, again, we're looking at what's called the RSOIE EDIS map. You can just type in RSOE and you'll find it. This is the details coming out of India at 11:07 a.m. UTC time. It says the landslide. As many as 150 people were feared dead in northern India after a Himalayan glacier broke and crashed into a dam early on Sunday, with floods forcing the evacuation of villages downstream. The actual number has not been confirmed yet, but 100 to 150 people were feared dead. Om Prakash, chief secretary of the state where the incident occurred, said that they reported a wall of dust, rock, and water as an avalanche roared down a river valley. Guys, again, very steep, very high banks. He said that they felt that they would be swept away. Locals fear that people working at a nearby hydropower project had been swept away. And if you will go in and, again, type in the glacier breaks landslide in India, you can see it does look like the foundation had been poured in some of the area. You couldn't really tell from the view that I saw if there were people working there or not, but it was the guy taking the picture was real high up on the cliff. It said, we have no idea how many people are missing. Prime Minister Narendra Modi said he was closely monitoring the situation. India stands with Uttarakhand, and the nation prays for everyone's safety there. They were speaking with the India Air Force, and they were being ready to help with rescue operations. I'm sure it would have to be helicopters. The federal government said while Home Minister Amit Shah said disaster response teams were being airlifted in to help with relief and rescue. All the concerned officers are working on a war footing. So, referring to the area by its nickname, the Hindu term for, land of the gods, not valley of the gods, due to the numerous Hindu temples and pilgrimage centers located across the state. Guys, keep these people in your thoughts and prayers because that would be a terrible thing to happen to anyone in your family. The neighboring state, India's most populous, was Uttar Pradesh, also put its riverside areas on high alert. Shared by locals, showed that the water washing away parts of the dam as well as whatever else was in its path. It looked pretty rough, guys. the flow of the Alaknanda River beyond Nang Prayag, excuse me for butchering the language, that has become normal. The chief minister, Singh Rot, said on Twitter, the water level on the river is now 1 meter above normal, but the flow is decreasing. In other words, that tsunami has come and passed, and it's going to be digging out and trying to find and rescue the people they can. Said it's prone to flash floods and landslides. In June 2013, record rainfall caused devastating floods that claimed close to 6,000 lives. And guys, I remember videos about that with a statue in the water, and they were watching the river rise at that time. That disaster was dubbed the Himalayan Tsunami by the media due to the torrents of water unleashed in the mountainous area. Now, this guys look like boulders, rocks, debris, and mud. That's what this one looked like. It was, let's see, it says the former waste or water resource minister and a senior leader of Modi's party criticized the construction of a power project in the area. When I was minister, I had requested that Himalaya is a very sensitive place, so power projects should not be built on the Ganga River or its main tributaries. She was referring to the main river that flows from the mountain. And guys, again, when you're dealing with the sun and you're dealing with the Earth's shields, you have to pay attention to what's going on there. Even though has not been that eventful, we've seen a few events. It's starting to pick up, though. The thing about the video that I want to also not forget to mention is the larger coronal hole is now directly facing us. So you're looking into Monday night into Tuesday before that larger area of opening that is going to let more solar wind out is going to be coming towards our planet. And again, tomorrow night into Tuesday, we will see the impacts of there. We don't know how strong it is. It's kind of, I've said it before, with this type of minimum, it's all in kind of a new science. But guys, we're watching it. You stay safe. It's a heads up. Be safe.